So welcome everyone, very warm welcome to the Young Dementia Network. Webinar. I'm Tessa Guttridge, Chair of the Young Dementia Network. And before I hand over to the lovely Dementia Forward team, I want to remind you that we would really welcome your participation in the chat. But if you have a question, can you pop it in the Q&A function? And we'll leave time at the end for answering your questions. I think that's it for now. Let me hand over to Fiona, who's going to take it away for us.
Good afternoon, and thank you to Young Dementia Network for inviting Dementia Forward to come along today and speak about the work that we're doing around young onset dementia in the North Yorkshire area. So I'm Fiona, and I'd like to start off by briefly telling you just a little bit about the charity. So we are Dementia Forward. We're a North Yorkshire charity, and we started in 2012. And we are commissioned to deliver dementia support throughout the whole of North Yorkshire, including the city of York. So our model is quite simple, but it's really effective, and that is that everyone with dementia is an individual, and the support that they have in their dementia needs to reflect that. So within our charity, we have a helpline run by qualified staff who can give advice, and they also take referrals, which are then passed on to a team of support advisors. These support advisors work all across North Yorkshire, and they provide home visits to clients so that we can best provide that support. And we give both emotional and practical support. And we also signpost to other services that the client might benefit from. We also advocate and we help clients through the health and social care pathway, because we know that sometimes that can be really tricky. And you can have enough on your plate when dementia comes into your life. And we aim to really support you through this as your dementia progresses. We have services, a wide range of services that support from pre-diagnosis and throughout the illness. And these are run by dementia activity coordinators, memory support advisors, and we also have a range of wellbeing services, including things like day services, singing groups and cafes. So please take a look at our website if you want to have a look at any of these, but we are going to talk about some of them today. So we've been supporting people with young onset dementia for well over a decade now. And as a charity, we've seen the many ups and downs that go with this disease in a younger person and how it affects both them and their families really differently from dementia in an older person. And today we're going to be using a case study to highlight some of these problems and how there needs to be a continued change in service development when it comes to young onset. So let's start by introducing myself in the panel. As I've said, I'm Fiona Andrews and I work in the community side of the charity. I deliver all of the training and awareness raising, as well as working on other projects alongside our community team. And I'm hopefully going to facilitate the way that we deliver this webinar today. And on the panel, we have Jill Quinn, who is our CEO and is the founder of Dementia Forward. Jill's going to speak at the end of the webinar and explain why it's so necessary to have specialist care facilities for those with young onset. And she's going to give you some statistics around the disease. And she'll also talk you through our young onset campaign, why we set it up and how you can become part of it, and how this campaign fits into the bigger picture. We also have Julia, who is our clinical lead, and she's our specialist dementia nurse. And Julia will talk to you today about the diagnostic process for young onset and the problems facing it from a clinical perspective. She'll talk to you as well about our brain health cafes and how we've set these up and how successful they are at bridging the gap that occurs before an official diagnosis. Because we know that the diagnostic process for a person with young onset can be really long. So we're actively working to give support during this time. And we also have Karen, who is our young onset lead. And Karen leads on all of our young onset clients and services and has done for the last 11 years. So she really is a subject matter expert on young onset dementia. So Karen is going to speak to you about the services we run in Dementia Forward for young onset and how she manages these services, as well as advocating for our clients as the dementia progresses and their needs change. This webinar, however, is going to be told through the eyes of Wendy and her husband, Mark, who are clients of Dementia Forward, and Mark has young onset dementia. Wendy has really kindly allowed us to video her as she speaks through Mark's journey with dementia so far. That's his diagnosis, how this has impacted the family, as well as the problems they have encountered along the way as the family support him through his dementia. So Wendy and Mark's story are going to be told through a set of short videos, which we'll then pause and the panel members will then talk through the various sections. So we're going to start by showing a video of Wendy as her introduction and then move straight on to the second video of Wendy when she speaks about the early changes in Mark that lead to his diagnosis. And you just might want to turn your volume up for this. So the first and the second video, please.
Hello, my name's Wendy Thickett and I have a husband called Mark Thickett who was diagnosed with young onset dementia at the age of 54. We have two sons together who are married and both have a wife. And I'm just here to tell you a little bit about our journey with dementia and how it's affected our family. So our journey started by me noticing that Mark was starting to have symptoms of something. We weren't sure what it was, but I knew he wasn't right. One of the things that happened with Mark was that Mark had always been a very precise driver. He had learnt to drive with his dad, and his dad was a very precise man who liked to do everything properly and everything in the correct order. One of the things Mark did when he was driving was he always went up and down the gears properly. So if he was in third gear and you were approaching a roundabout, he would go to second and then first, and then he would come to a halt. And he suddenly started not doing that anymore. So we would approach a roundabout and he would suddenly move into first gear and obviously stall the car and things like that. For some people it wouldn't have been a trigger or a sign that something wasn't right, but for me, because it wasn't Mark and hadn't been for all the years we've been married, it was very obvious that something wasn't right. We had other symptoms as well, the obvious things like forgetting people's names, forgetting people's faces, not going to places when he was expected to, doing unusual things, the usual sort of things. So after a while I persuaded Mark that it would be a good idea to go and see the GP. We had an appointment, and after a bit of persuasion the GP suggested that we go to the memory clinic. So for 2 years on and off we were at the memory clinic. We had appointments, Mark had lots of scans, we had tests, we had all kinds of things. And then in the December, Mark went off to an appointment that I couldn't attend at the memory clinic, and he came back saying that he'd been diagnosed with anxiety and depression, and that was definitely what it was. That was what all the symptoms were. And I just went, no, I just don't believe it. So after a bit of a few phone calls, I managed to speak to the consultant, and the consultant said, well, I don't know what else you want me to do. We've done majority of the tests we can do. I asked the consultant if there was anything at all that he could do, and he eventually agreed to do a PET scan on Mark. In the January we went for the results of the scan, and we were told that Mark had young onset Alzheimer's. We were absolutely devastated, and I remember that we left that appointment and we went and sat in the car park. And we were so stunned. We just sat there for ages. We couldn't talk to each other. We just were devastated. And of course we had to come home and tell our sons, who at that point were 26 and 29, that their father had Alzheimer's.
Thank you. I'm now going to hand over to Julia, who's going to speak through the diagnostic problems and how our brain health cafes are helping. So over to you, Julia.
Thanks, Fiona. Hello, everybody. So I'm Julia, Dementia Nurse at Dementia Forward. So what Wendy clearly articulates in that video is the years preceding Mark's diagnosis. There was a situation in which she and her family were certain that something wasn't right. She noticed that Mark was starting to have symptoms of something, but they didn't know what that was. Now, these early signs and symptoms differ amongst individuals, and it could be that people begin to notice that someone's forgetting names and faces, or they could begin to do things that are unusual to them. It could be poor recall of recently learned information, increased confusion, repetition, or early memory problems. Often, though, these are preceded by more subtle signs that something isn't right. For example, when familiar tasks become less familiar. Now, Wendy described this beautifully in the video in Mark's changing of the gears whilst he was driving. He'd always been precise in the car, but started doing it differently, which was out of character for him. And Wendy knew that that was wrong. For others, it could be increased apathy, lack of motivation. People may ask for clarity more often, or they lose fluency and need to concentrate more on tasks. They may experience difficulty with sequencing, moving from one task to another, and emotion and behaviours may change. They may develop mood changes, irritability, have changes in sleep patterns, appetite. The list is exhaustive. And they may withdraw from family and friends. Fluency of language may change, and recall of certain words may become more challenging. And they may also develop more pauses in conversation, as this is valuable thinking time. And you may at those times see a heightened level of uncertainty in their eyes. This family knowledge is the resource that's much needed. Mark's family were told that he had anxiety or depression, and although this may have been a product of the changes that he was experiencing, Wendy knew that this wasn't the cause. And the difficulty is that in the early stages, these signs can mirror other conditions, and other conditions need to be ruled out. Families are absolutely crucial in keeping a very detailed log and having the confidence to return to the GP, and sometimes this takes time after time. It's vital not to be afraid to challenge decisions where there are concerns. Crucial family knowledge needs to be treated as a resource and not ignored. So we work with multiple families who start to notice signs and who need help navigating a way forward so that they can get the answers to the puzzle that's forming in front of them. Dementia in younger people isn't expected, which makes it more difficult to identify. Families need to be able to feel empowered to return to the GP, to question and to articulate their observations, their resource, in an attempt to shorten what's often a very long wait for diagnosis. And this diagnosis can make a difference to keep the person in work, for example, to have adjustments made so that they can maintain a sense of purpose, of value, crucially keep having an income. So Wendy explained that Mark had an issue at work where he forgot a basic step, and this caused problems where he himself had felt sidelined. But with his diagnosis, he felt that he had an explanation, and had he had this diagnosis earlier, with an understanding from his workplace, his work may have felt more possible. This time is crucial and precious, and a timely diagnosis helps to stop the uncomfortable time of uncertainty when families don't know what they're dealing with. Our team of memory support advisors work within primary care and within the community, holding drop-in and bookable clinic appointments for people to go to if they have a cognitive concern. And because of the high wait times for diagnosis, we've also developed our brain health cafe model. This growing cafe model provides a welcoming and socially engaging place. It's for people who are waiting for a diagnosis, or for those who just wish to call in if they've got any concerns about their own cognition or the cognition of a family or a friend. We know that GP practices can be intimidating, so we're keen to provide a space where people can talk through concerns, where they can have these concerns validated, and crucially, where they can learn more about how to move their concerns forward. These cafes bring clinical and community services together, reducing health inequalities and going some way to building stronger and more inclusive communities. Our key aims are to reduce health anxiety, to reduce fear and worry, loneliness and isolation, and to enable people to wait well in line with the dementia strategy. Fear of stigma can prevent a person from accessing a diagnosis, so we try to provide good information in a sensitive way. We work to ensure the pathway to diagnosis is seamless and supportive, empowering people with cognitive decline to make choices about the support they seek, and for them also to have an awareness of available services and to receive support with referrals if this is needed. And crucially, we try to enable people to feel empowered to return to the GP, to question, to offer a different point of view, and to feel able to say, no, this doesn't feel right. Having conversations with our specialist colleagues at the Brain Health Cafe can begin to give people the confidence to do this. And as a result, at these cafes, memory services report an increase in people attending the clinic who are already connected to services and who are aware of what's available to them. People are more knowledgeable, they've become more used to articulating the changes that they're experiencing, which in turn lays the foundation and puts them in a better position to receive this life-changing diagnosis and to articulate their needs going forward. Thank you very much. I'll hand back to Fiona.
Excellent, thank you, Julia. If we can move on to the next video, please.
So here we were as a family in shock, as you can imagine, from our diagnosis. We also had an issue with Mark's work. Mark was diagnosed in the January, and the previous December there had been an incident at work where Mark had forgot a very basic step in what he was doing. And it had caused quite a lot of problems at work, and it was very upsetting for us all. And of course, with our diagnosis, we had an explanation for what had happened, because of course he'd forgotten to do a basic step because Mark has Alzheimer's. But unfortunately, his company had already moved him off that project and onto something that they felt was less important in case it happened again. So we were struggling with the work problems and the diagnosis. And coincidentally, I happened to get a phone call from a Dementia Forward. Actually, they rang me about my father, who has some memory issues as well, and they've been working with him. And in the course of the conversation, I chatted with the lady and explained about Mark's diagnosis. And fortunately, obviously, they were able to help us. We had a worker come along and have a chat with us and meet Mark, and she'd given us lots of help and suggestions on to how we moved forward with things. And one of the things that we were told about was that the Dementia Forward actually run a group on a Wednesday that are specifically for young onset dementia patients. And so, you know, it was suggested that if Mark would like to go along, he could. Mark resisted for a while. He didn't feel at that point he wanted to take a day off work to do that, because he felt work was very important, obviously. But gradually, as the year went on, and it was obvious that work had sidelined Mark, I managed to persuade him that actually maybe having a day off one day a week wasn't going to be a problem, and that it would be good for him to join this group. So in the September, finally, Mark decided to go along one Wednesday and join the group. And I can honestly say he never looked back, because I think suddenly he had somewhere where he could talk to somebody about the things that were bothering him, about his diagnosis, about work, about everything. He met other people who were in a similar situation to him, which of course, you know, again, it gives you a new perspective on things. And as a family, we had some support. Suddenly we had somewhere we could turn when we needed, when we had questions, somebody to talk to ourselves about things.
We're now going to hear from Karen, who's head of our Young Onset.
Thank you, Fiona. So I'd like to cut back to Fiona's explanation of our services at the beginning, where we go out when we have a referral into Dementia Forward. We have a support advisor that is allocated to families, and they go out to do a home visit where they get a quick snapshot of what is happening in a person's life, in the family's life. They can assess problems. They signpost appropriately, and they can give emotional support and see where people are in their experience. They essentially establish a relationship when they go, and this relationship we look to maintain throughout a family's experience, and we base that on the terms of the family themselves, so they can see us as much or as little as they like. They know how to contact us, they know how to see us, and so that relationship to our support is crucial. And we also, as Fiona said, we have services that we run in the community. So these are hub clubs, we have cafes, we have singing groups, and we do those because we recognise the need for engagement, and we recognise that you know, people need to meet people in a similar situation. They need routine, activity, well-being, and so if we kind of cut back to if we apply that to people with young onset, then all those services that we're signposting to, all those community engagement opportunities, they need to look different. They need to be different for people with young onset. And essentially, because there aren't many services out there, I think the support that we can offer could be described as an attitude. It's a very can-do attitude. It's essentially a creative problem-solving attitude. And its framework is the flexibility of the model of Dementia Forward, that when our support advisors go into people's homes, we're really making a bespoke service for them, and we're looking at the problems they have then, and then we're maintaining that relationship in order to continue with them so that we can keep up with the changes as well. So because we're hearing the need basically from people with dementia and families right in the midst of pre-diagnosis, all the way through their experience, then we start to see patterns. We start to hear the same things that we start to hear from other people. So for instance, to help us fill the gap, so that does help us fill the gaps obviously, but for instance, we hear a lot, we see a lot more living bereavement in our younger onset clients. So we are creating a service where we're talking specifically to people who can, counsellors who can create and support our clients by being specialists in living bereavement. We see and hear a lot of people say that their friends are kind of disappearing, they're not supporting them anymore, and we know there's many reasons for that and many different reasons for that. So what we've done to try and solve that problem is to create a video so that we're appealing to friends so that they can know how to engage and know how important their input is. So we have a video on our website, and we give our support advisors cards so they can subtly give them to family members to give to their friends. So work is a massive problem for people, obviously, and really clearly what we're seeing is that people who are no longer working have left work because obviously their employer has felt that they're not able to do their job in the same way that they were. But people who have a diagnosis while they're still at work, they are still employed, and their employers work with them to actually make it so they can continue working. So these things, we're working with businesses, we're working with employers, and we've made leaflets and resources in order to support that based on what we're hearing from clients. So the services that we have that Wendy alluded to and told us about a little bit about the Time Out Together service, which actually fitted with their family really well. We have these slides are pictures of clients on those groups. I'd just like to point out that the man who looks like he's upside down, he's actually hanging off a wall. And the lady with her arms in the air, that's a live photograph where she's just got a strike in bowling and everybody's arms go up at the same time. But this group is essentially an outward bound group. We have 3 of those running across North Yorkshire, in Harrogate, in York and Scarborough. We have a new one starting tomorrow in our Skipton area, and we can accommodate up to 10 clients with 4 members of staff and a bus, and essentially we We do all sorts of sports, but we do walks, we might do something creative, go to stately homes. And what we see on that service is we see people's personalities, because we're essentially having time out together. There is no real definition between staff and clients. Everybody's just out having a good time, and clients are not the cared for in that service. So we recognise that, you know, not everybody is as ambulant or as mobile as you would need to be on that service. So we also have, we're also looking at place-based services as well. So we actually had 2 young onset hubs, and we've changed the status of one of those now, because actually we found that we didn't make enough changes to make it appropriate for people with young onset. It came across a few problems, so we've stopped that. We're learning from other charities that do provide a service like that, and then we will redesign that and start again. So we have partnerships really out in the community. That's how we do our creative problem solving in many ways, because we work with nature reserves and people who offer volunteering opportunities so that people can still be giving back to their community, and within this age group that is really important for well-being. We work with people who provide befriending services, so whether that be paid for or volunteering, so that our clients have one-to-one experience and are able to go out and still access the hobbies that they really enjoy. So things might be cycling or climbing, as you see here, or running, or just going out for a walk, and quite often they just need support with that. So we're also working with the climbing walls, the community cycling centres, places where it gives our clients choice in order to, you know, have a routine in their week. So because we're working with people throughout their experience, we also are working with 3 respite units and 2 care facilities to create specific really respite and appropriate respite and care for people with young onset as well. But I think in short, our support is really, as I say, an attitude. It's a can-do, and it's a problem-solving, creatively problem-solving attitude.
That's brilliant. Thank you so much, Karen. If we can move on to the next slide, please. So if you look at this photo on the screen, Mark, the guy who we're talking about, is the guy to the left of this picture. And this was taken on one of the Time Out Together days. And Mark continued attending this group, which he really enjoyed for the next few years. However, over time, and as his dementia progressed, the situation at home became really challenging. And at one point, Mark went out for a walk by himself. The family didn't know that he'd left the home, and he just didn't come back. So there was a frantic search with friends and neighbours, and the police finally found him 4 hours later, bloodied and covered in mud, and he was unable to say where he'd been, but he was obviously really, really upset. And it was at this point that the family realised that Mark couldn't now be left alone, and he needed some kind of daycare. And the family were introduced to Dementia Forward hub clubs, and Mark started to attend here 4 days a week. Once again, he really enjoyed these clubs, and the clubs give the family some space and time for them to continue with their lives, knowing that Mark was in a happy and a suitable place during the day for his care needs. However, 18 months later, the situation changed again, and the family now realised that they had to consider residential care. So I will let Wendy talk you through this on the next video, please.
So in January this year, we got to the point where Mark was needing some personal care. And as a family, we found this incredibly difficult. Mark was living in a household where we had a granddaughter who was running around. Mark was having accidents. He needed help with everything. He needed showering, you name it, everything. I mean, at this point, Mark could not really do an awful lot for himself. And as a family, we were beginning to feel the tension and the stress. So I made a phone call to the local council to ask for a care needs assessment, which they eventually organised, and a social worker came along, and we had a meeting, and during the meeting I felt that this social worker just didn't understand where we were, what we were doing, how we were feeling. We tried so hard to tell her that we were at crisis point and that things were deteriorating, but she just didn't seem to understand, and I don't really know why. Anyway, I asked for another social worker because I wasn't happy with the care needs assessment. 3 social workers later, we eventually got a social worker who really seemed to listen to what we were saying. We had a family meeting. We had a family meeting without Mark, which was the first time we'd had the meeting without Mark present. And I feel we were able to say things that we hadn't been able to say in the previous meetings because of being aware that Mark was listening. And also at this point, this is 8 months after we started this process, Dementia Forward kindly spoke to this social worker and really made it clear that we were at crisis point. We were at breaking point, actually, never mind a crisis. The family and the whole family. This was not just one of us or 2 of us. We had 5 adults here looking after Mark on a daily basis, 24/7, and we couldn't do it anymore. We had just got to the point, 7.5 years we've been doing it, and it was just too much for us. Mark needed professional support, and we just weren't able to give it to him. In our conversations with Dementia Forward, and there were many over those few months, there were emails, there were meetings, chatting, support, advice. It had been brought to our notice that a young onset unit had opened at a care home in York. And when we got to the point that we really knew that it was residential care was Mark's option for the future, my daughter-in-law and I decided to go and visit this unit, and we went in, and we had a lovely visit, had a long chat with the manager, and when we came out, I sat in the car and cried and said to my daughter-in-law, this is the place for Mark. I knew within half an hour that that was the right place for Mark to be, and partly it was because the manager was saying to me, what does Mark like to do? What does Mark like to eat? What is he interested in? What has he done in the past? Not what medication does he need? Not how often do you have to remind him to go to the loo? How often do you need to change him? He was asking me personal things about Mark as a person, not about Mark with dementia.
I'm now going to hand you over to Jill, who's going to talk about the campaign and finish the webinar off. Thank you.
Sorry, I just first of all need to fess up, in case anyone saw me at the beginning, that I spilt a glass of water over my entire desk, and I've sat in a puddle throughout, and now I'm struggling to get my screen to, how irritating. Never mind, I'm going to do it off the top of my head. I can't load anything. What you've heard, and particularly that last bit about Mark and his lovely family managing to find him somewhere suitable to go to, none of that happened by accident. And that care home, I take my hat off to the lady who owns that care company, and came with us on what felt like a bit of a gamble, because she threw everything into the ring to create an 8-bed young onset dementia unit, and got it right, probably at great costs, and we're yet to see how it all unfolds. It was extremely brave, and within probably less than 6 months, I'm relieved to say that it had filled. And then she felt, well, I need to extend it, and so she's extended it. She also took on the challenge that we've got in persuading care companies to reserve places for respite and for daycare. If we only deal with one little bit of this journey, we create gaps. And actually worse still, which is what I'll go on to explain what we were doing, we actually created our own cliff edges. Because if you're getting the beginning bit right, but you haven't looked ahead at what's going to happen next, so people fall off a cliff edge. So still a lot to do, but there's been brave people who've come on this journey with us. So we could have the next slide, thank you. So we were naively very happy that we had this model that we operated to generically for dementia. And I'm not asking you to read every line, but at the bottom left, you can see that what we literally did was bolted on our young onset day service that we were providing, this wonderful outward bound day service. And much as that was amazing, what actually happened was the fact that we had it meant that we attracted people. The dementia strategy in North Yorkshire said there were 173 people living in North Yorkshire with a young onset diagnosis. And suddenly we had 350 people plus on our books because we'd taken the proverbial lid off that can of worms and people were coming to us. But it was no good us just doing that one thing. And what we actually needed to do was rewrite our model specifically for young onset, create our own internal pathway of how we would support people as we went along. So we can have the next slide, please. And with that, change our mindset. Now, this is one very interesting part of it. I mean, I think one of the big elements of getting young onset care right is training, and more training. But even within our own team, and I won't name this person, but somebody who I'd actually worked with across 2 different dementia organisations who had probably 20 years experience, when asked if she would like to be involved with the young onset work that we were doing, she said no, she wouldn't. She didn't feel qualified. She didn't know what to do. It fascinated me that this expert in dementia was honest enough to say, yes, but this is young onset dementia. It's almost like a different illness that should have a different name. And that's what we needed to get right. So we rewrote our pathway. We have developed what we would like to think is a specialist stream of work. Everything, even our language didn't work, you know, and we have this theory that most of the time we're not caring for, we are getting beside people and their families to keep them right. We had to make new connections. Karen talked about that. Endless elements to this that we feel we need to tickle. More recently, funding came through North Yorkshire Sport, who get their funding from Sport England, that we're hoping will enable us to work with every leisure centre across North Yorkshire and gym, so that we don't have to be there. We don't need volunteers. People should be able to go under their own steam and be understood when they want to keep themselves well and fit. So we're developing new toolboxes, new ranges of leaflet and information, new training, lots of training needed. Because basically shoehorning people with young onset dementia into older people's services is just not going to work. And that brings me on to the funding element and the bit that we really have to tackle. And this is a very naive, very top surface. You know, some people might just think I'm being quite silly when I say this, but at the moment, we are trying to support people with young onset dementia. Our statutory partners are trying to support people with young onset dementia out of existing budgets that sit in older people's services. And it's bad. It doesn't work. We had a social worker recently who said, this person can go into this care home because they're not under 65, they're 66. And it's that kind of lack of understanding about what we mean about appropriate settings. So why don't we use the fabulous statistics that Dementia UK have finally managed to change, because we've been working with wrong figures, to separate the budget, pull out the money that you would have used badly and use it well in a young onset environment. We are delighted with the fact that we can work alongside Dementia UK with their campaign, and I know that they focused a lot on diagnosis and now are looking at the pathways, and we have our own campaign, and that's running alongside it in a way, because we've already taken that lid off in terms of service delivery. So we have a scattergun approach in that we need to look at all aspects almost all at the same time. But and hopefully we'll get some hits out of that. We need to embrace the mess that we've made by taking that lid off, and hope that people will follow. So the next slide, thank you. I'm going to be really quickly explain this. I've got a feeling we're probably running out of time. This is Jonathan. We met Jonathan, who wanted to do something positive about the fact that he had a young onset diagnosis. Jonathan was in a band in the 80s, dreamt of being a musician like young lads often do, but ended up being an exec in the music industry with some leading like EMI and Virgin. And we decided to use his love of music so that he could be the face of our campaign. And we decided that we needed to make a fuss so that we could be heard from North Yorkshire. Our aim is that we will develop something in North Yorkshire that we can share nationally, but we don't often get heard. We needed to create a voice. And so we made a music track. And in a moment, you're going to see Jonathan going down to the studio in London, owned by Mark Knopfler of Dire Straits. We pulled in loads of favours. Jonathan went down, made this track. I'd love you to just sit back and relax and listen to this and hear the words, because they're Jonathan's words, and they make sense to us. And just finally, before that we show the film, the hashtag Yoda bit is that Jonathan's birthday is the 24th of October, and we registered that as a National Young Onset Dementia Day. And to use our words, we'd love it if everybody would make a fuss on that date, because there are too many people out there who still don't understand that young onset dementia is a thing. And that's the starting place. So I hope you enjoy. This is the track that we recorded and released, and this is Jonathan down in London.
Something's wrong. I'm on a line with bad connection. Can't find the words to tell you how it feels. I'm not lost. Inside I'm still the same. The road ahead may be long, but at least we're driving. 'Cause I'm still me and I intend to be for keeps. You know there's nothing certain in this life, no guarantees. But there's you and me. We'll take the light, we'll take the dark, the in-between. Whatever we need, I don't know about you, but I don't mind. 'Cause after every thunderstorm comes a calmer sea. When there's you and me, it's you and me, you up. Times will change, but we can make the most of every moment. Just meet me here, where I am today. I'm not gone, my heart still knows your name. There's still time to live the rest of our lives together. 'Cause I'm still me and I intend to be for keeps. You know there's nothing certain in this life, no guarantees. But there's you and me. We'll take the light, we'll take the dark, the in-between. Whatever we need, I don't know about you, but I don't mind. 'Cause after every thunderstorm comes a calmer sea. When still you. I'm still me, and will be for keeps. Oh.
Pretty cool. Hello. You got that one. Great.
Everybody is saying how marvellous that was and how it brought them to tears. And thank you so much for putting that before us, that wonderful song, but also your amazing service. You're so right. It's not enough to do part of it, is it? You just literally create more problems by doing that, and you need it from pre-diagnosis right the way through. Otherwise, it's just not good enough, is it, for people? I think you've got a number of attendees who are actually moving to Yorkshire. You've got people, professionals who are coming on day trips to see you, and you've got relationships wanting to be developed with the state. So well done. I'm going to move swiftly to the questions because we do have quite a lot of them. So whoever's most appropriate, could you respond? And then any that are left over, you very kindly said that you'll answer for us. So let me launch straight in. So first off, do primary care clinicians have the right understanding and access to more appropriate screening tools to identify young onset dementia better? Is there anyone who feels able to answer that one?
Julia.
So it's very set, the process within primary care, and there is scope for immense change, immense knowledge and immense training. The purpose of the campaign is to increase awareness, because we recognise that many people aren't having the access to diagnostic assessment that they need. Yeah. Does that fully answer?
And we do have a team of workers now working in primary care, in GP surgeries.
Excellent.
We're trying to deformalise the assessment by taking the stigma out of it and making the barrier that some people feel to going to their GP surgery. We're trying to break that down by providing clinics within spaces that aren't perhaps as intimidating.
Yeah. And you mentioned the Brain Health Cafe. Wanted to know how the Brain Health Cafe is publicised and where is it or they located? And do you have any advice about the best kind of location to hold one?
Yeah, shall I come in again, Jill? Is that okay? So we did a mail out through primary care to all people from GP surgeries across the city of York initially to publicise it, and we connected up with the local memory services who include an invite to it within their initial letter. So when a person's referred to them, they receive information about where they are. So we've got 2 up and running in the city of York, and we're just starting a new one in North Yorkshire next week. But we've had interest from primary care across the region they're going to grow. Yeah.
Sounds like a very reassuring space for people to express their concerns, and it's so needed, isn't it?
Mm.
Do you have representatives from the memory clinic attending your brain health cafes?
Yeah, so what we do, we have a memory nurse from memory clinic coming once a month, and they bring with them their computer so they can access their, you know, secondary care records, which can be very reassuring for people who attend, who need to know where they are on the waiting list, and they need to be able to have that information. So that's worked really well, yeah.
And picking up some comments about lack of services elsewhere, which I think the chat has offered some links to other young onset services in different areas of the country. So which professionals attend the cafe? Is it commissioned? Is it a commissioned service, or is it run by the charity with invites to professionals?
Yeah, so we receive, sorry, Jill, go.
No, well, I was just going to say it is commissioned. It's a bit of a shoestring budget that comes in from the commissioning, and we bolster it because we're voluntary sector. We're able to bolster it with volunteers, so the catering's all taken care of. But yes, it is commissioned, and the good thing about that is that Julia produces outcomes that are being measured, and hence, you know, they're looking at the success of it, and hopefully it will roll out.
We have a wide range of professionals who attend week by week, ranging from diabetes nurses to colleagues from social care, memory services, musicians, carers, centres, a whole range. Yeah, it's too big to list, but we can happily send out information if that's helpful.
Yes. Thank you. So we find that our main group of people with dementia are older and have issues including younger people because they don't feel they belong with older people. That's commonly felt, isn't it?
Yeah.
The latest new member is only the second person to come into the group with young onset. Help with inclusion and not making them feel out of the group. Any quick advice on that? I'm going to
hand it to Karen, but I just want to say first of all that Karen was so right when she challenged the fact that we were trying to use the same environments for our hub clubs for the young onset, and it doesn't work, or it didn't work. And Karen challenged that and has new ways of doing it now. Yeah,
so that's one answer. Karen?
I think if people are all in the same environment, actually what happens is that in some cases they just become a natural group anyway. But I think a younger person may have maybe more physically, you know, able, so they may need more physical activities that they need to be doing, and just kind of an ability to sort of maybe go off and do their own thing a little bit, you know, so things are less led. I think that would probably be another piece of advice I would give.
Yeah. And I think, Jill, you mentioned that being alongside a person and the family rather than caring, and I think that comes into it, doesn't it? The leading and the caring. It's really actually about being alongside.
When I go back to that member of staff who said no, that's not for me, and was happy in her work with older people, I think that was the crux of it. Actually, I think it was that she likes caring for people, and didn't see that vulnerability within the group that we were asking her to work with. Actually, it is still there, but it's there in a different way. So yes, we talk about being alongside, and that's the training that we gave that care home. We took them out to our groups and we made them experience it, and it was quite a shock to them, the different style that they needed to. It's a mindset, terribly important. So I'm back to training. You might think we thought we did and we didn't.
What are you doing regarding the word diversity? I'm interested to know if you discuss cultural issues when speaking to people.
We do. We're not best placed to. We sit in North Yorkshire, where certainly there's not that much cultural diversity, but we absolutely recognise it, and we are about to bump into it more in the new group that we're opening, and we need to learn from that. We've done a huge amount of work on LGBT. We have a trustee on our board who leads on that work and is part of national groups and is steering us. We're always learning, but we are of course open to diversity.
Thank you very much. Wondering what kind of training your living bereavement specialists have, and that's from Mary, an OT clinical lead for a young onset service in Surrey.
So this is something very new that we're looking into at the moment. And at the moment, we're kind of in the process of gathering potential counsellors. But I would see the training being very much based on understanding what it means to have young onset, understanding the kinds of lives that our carers and our families have. I think it's possible for us to share case studies, for them to meet people, for them to discuss situations that have cropped up, and then sort of find an understanding of the kind of loss that people are experiencing. You know, the loss of, you know, people might be looking to be promoted and then they suddenly can't work, and they have partners who are out at work, and the loss of friends and the loss of the future that was planned. And I think the training, again, it will kind of inform itself, because the counsellors themselves will bring information as well, and they will have ideas on how that can work. But it's just, we're right at the beginning of just recognising that it needs to happen, because actually our counselling services, our bereavement counselling services, are so busy and so full that actually people with living bereavement are being put to the bottom of the list. So it will evolve, I think. So, I mean, I would say if anybody has ideas, then we're really open to hearing all that, because we are filling the gaps and working it out as we go along. And this is something that we've recognised as something that's being really important.
I think something not to underestimate is that to do what we're doing, it's a bit like that thing that you need a village to raise a child. We cannot do this on our own. And so we've entered into a multitude of partnerships. And you can't really underestimate actually the amount of work that takes. It sometimes feels like trudging through treacle, but
Yes.
we're making those partnerships all the time. So we're talking with a hospice that has a bereavement centre about this, and then it becomes an equal partnership. We educate each other, and then we can move forward. But Karen, bless her, has a huge list of people who she's currently working with to make this happen.
Phenomenal work. What professionals are referring into you?
All of them. Yeah, because we're pre-diagnosis right the way through. It's friends and neighbours, it's people themselves, and then it's GPs, social workers, hospital staff. So yeah, the whole range.
The full range.
Yeah.
This is a quick one. Do you have a Wakefield Castleford support group or time-out sessions?
We're North Yorkshire, sadly.
Okay. What?
But we're happy to share our model, by the way, to anybody who's interested.
Yes.
We're North Yorkshire, but the part of the campaign is to create a voice, not only of our own, but of other people's as well. So we're really happy to share what we learn and then learn from other people. So we can tell you all about the Time Out Together group, how that works, how we've gone about creating that, and share it, and tell you what makes it successful and what's difficult. But actual services we run ourselves will be in North Yorkshire.
Yeah. Okay, we're right towards the end. I'm going to slip in one. What was the name of the 8-bed young onset dementia unit? Are you able to say that?
Yes, we are. It's called the Manor, and it's part of St Catherine's Care Home in York. And we are now working with Lavender Fields, which is in Pocklington, in a care village, to help them develop their young onset unit as well.
And can I just add that there's Orchard House in Scarborough as well, who are looking to create specific young onset respite.
Brilliant. Last one, really quick one. Is it Jonathan singing?
No, it's my son.
Sorry?
It's my son singing.
Oh, your son. Okay.
It's Jonathan's words that Scott helped him.
Words.
Yeah, and then Jonathan doing solo guitar. Yeah.
Right. So I'm going to close the Q&A session now. Not that we've finished, but any others that we haven't answered, Catherine will share with you, and we can add that to the email, which will go out with the recording, with the slides, with any other useful information from Dementia Forward, and that'll go out, I think, Friday. I'm going to just say thank you so much to the Dementia Forward team, Jill, Fiona, Karen and Julia. You have just a phenomenal service, and I know you work incredibly hard, and it is incredibly hard work to keep things going and keep growing. Actually, I really understand that. So thank you so much for today. I just want to mention the next webinar, Young Dementia Network webinar, which is it's Tuesday, 12th of March, midday. It's our collaboration with the Netherlands Knowledge Centre, and that's going to be about using diagnosis as a starting point for support. So do look out for that, and we'll pop a link to join that onto the Friday email as well. But other than that, thank you so much, everybody. Thank you for attending, and look forward to seeing you again.
Thanks, Tessa.
Thank you.